Hello everybody and welcome. It's Hugh here at LOXONE and I'm here with another one of our Focus series webinars. So the last few webinars we've been focusing on upcoming features in version 11 of Config and the app. And I would like to continue that thread today with another thing that will be changing, or rather being optimized is probably a better word, in version 11. And that is user management. So user management will be having a complete overhaul in version 11. Now, don't be worried, any existing systems will carry on exactly as they were, no amendments needed, just update to version 11, they'll be fine. But what it gives us for any new systems or any systems that you're going to be altering is a lot greater flexibility with permissions. And so this is going to be our kind of video for today, is looking at what these changes are. So that little snippet there, that little image, gives us an idea of how this will be broken down. The new permissions dialog is users, user groups, and rights. And then within each of these, we have a lot more granularity as to what we can do. In the app, this has actually been here since version 10's release. But just in case anyone doesn't know, in the app, you can adjust users and user groups. So in the app, you can create users and assign users to user groups. This is obviously going to be continuing. And the great thing is that if we can just about see the rights here, you don't have to make someone an administrator to do this. So for instance, if you've got a commercial building where you've got a receptionist who's in charge of this, all they need to have the right for is user management. As long as they have the right for user management, they can adjust users in the app. So they can create a user, add them to a user group, create them access codes. They can even pair in NFC tags in the app as well. And then exactly as this email shows here, before a new starter starts at your office, you could email them with a welcome email with an access code that would be like a one-time only code to get into the door on their first day. And then on their desk, you'd have a fob waiting for them. So really, really cool. And then in config, I'm not going to show you too much of that because we're going to get onto that next. We are going to show the nitty-gritty stuff. So before we get into config, let's first understand how user management used to be in LOXONE config to understand why what we've done now is better. So user management in config used to be that at one tier you had the user. So you would create a user. You would then assign a user to a user group. And then on a function block that you were displaying in the app, you would say which user group can view that function block. It's very, very simple. It works great for homes, but it doesn't have the level of scalability that we may need for commercial buildings or even for larger homes. Now, to give you an example of a real life scenario of my brother in his house with his kids. So my brother, his wife, 3 young children. In each of the kids' bedrooms, I want to make sure that Ross, who is, oh God, I should know this off the top of my head, 10? Yeah, that sounds right. Ross, who's nearly 10, 9.5, he should be able to, in his tablets, mess around with the lighting and the music in his own bedroom. But he shouldn't be able to mess with his older sister, Erin's. Her bedroom should be her own domain. But of course, the parents need to access both of those bedrooms. And the way that LOXONE config currently does user management, what this means is that there has to be a parents user group, a Ross user group, an Erin user group, and an Isabel user group. And then the various function blocks need to be assigned to the different user groups who can see them. And because these are staggered user groups, that means that even to the level of if we want Ross to have access to, let's say, the lights in the kitchen on his app, then the function block in the kitchen for the lighting needs to have allowable user groups as Ross. And then we've got to make sure that Erin is also a member of the Ross user group, or else we have to have an all user group that then the global functions get a member of, and then users get put into several groups. So you can see how it can get quite convoluted and complex. And so what this works out as is there are actually now 5 user groups. You've got all, parents, Erin, Ross, Isabel. And so the lighting in the kitchen, for instance, would be under all. And then all of the users would have the user group all. The lighting in Ross's bedroom is under the user group Ross. So Ross is then a member of all and Ross. But for the parents, they're a member of all parents, Ross, Erin, and Isabel. So they're a member of all of the user groups because they have to be able to see those function blocks. And you can see straight away that even in just a nuclear family, this is starting to get a bit... Now imagine that in a commercial environment. Imagine where we may have a commercial office with access doors maybe throughout the office space that either different departments can access or different tiers of the management structure can access. For instance, we might have the front door that everyone can get through. We might have the meeting room door that senior members of staff can get through. We might have the offices which the staff can get through. We might have a canteen that guests can access, but then we might have certain areas like maybe a top floor that's dedicated to senior management that only the senior managers group can get through. Now that would work fine in principle if people were completely locked down to their areas, but in any commercial building that I can think of, there'd always be a few outliers, a few members of staff that would need a little bit extra access than everyone else within their department. An example that I can think of straight off the top of my head would be someone like an IT manager or an IT officer. Now, not only are they going to have the generic staff access, but they probably also need just one door that would typically be in the realms of the senior management, which would be the server room door. So the server room door you would normally lock down to senior management, but your IT officer would need to access it, even though he's a member of staff. And so to do this in the way that user groups used to be in LOXONE would be quite cumbersome, because you'd have to create an entirely new user group just for that one function block that you'd then have to remember to put both the IT manager and the senior management into that user group as well as their own individual user groups. Now, wouldn't it be great if we could just do one-off access? And this is what a lot of the new user management permissions are based around. And so to take a look at this properly in config, let's start with the users. Users, just like they always were, you create them. But now, we don't have a tick box down the side to say what groups that user is a member of. We can still assign users to groups. So we can still go on one of these users and manage their group membership and say that they're a member of the user group. So we can still assign users to groups, and that's fine, that's great. We've still got user groups. So we can still create user groups and we can still assign users to them. Cool, easy, simple. But the really, really great thing, the extra thing, is that in the finer level of user management and permission management, where we've got groups, we can say exactly what rights a specific group has. So remember, any user who's a member of this group can do these things. And so we could say a member of user has access to Autopilot Designer. Easy. The other level we can do it though is we could say that a user group has access to everything in a specific room. So a room level access, or even down to a function block level access. So anyone who's a member of user has access to the touch and grill, for instance. And we can also specify whether that is internal and external, or just one of the other, or none at all as well. But the really cool thing is we can do this on a by user level as well. So if we were to have a user group that was, say, senior management, so we'd have our senior management user group, and we would then want to manage their permissions, and senior management, they have access to just about everything. So I could tick all of the various rights, and they also have all of the various rooms. So they just have access to anything. You can also see that when it comes to room level access, you can also specify an access time as well. So this is another new bit that's been added, is schedules. And so you can then create access times when they can access those specific features as well. So that's quite nice. So now we've got our senior management group, and I could go and stick a few, users into it. So senior management, manage members, and select some users. And I could stick me and Philip in it. Of course, I'd be senior management. Why wouldn't I be? And so we've now got users in the senior management group. And that's great. That means that I've now got every bit of access that the senior management group has. But as I said, there could be one outlier. Let's say, for instance, that we had another user called Tyron. And Tyron was a member of the users group. However, we had one specific function, let's say the burglar alarm. There we go. That was normally reserved for senior management. And we can do this as well. You'll see that this is changed as well on the burglar alarm. So I can now say that I want to manage permissions, and I can again either add user groups or users specifically to this. And I can also see who has access to this. So at the moment, only senior management and full access has access to the burglar alarm. So Tyron would not. However, for whatever reason, Tyron, because Tyron gets into work at 5 o'clock in the morning, so he's always the first person here and he needs to unset the alarm, we want to make a one-off exception. That even though Tyron's access doesn't grant him the burglar alarm normally, we want to say that he can access this function block. And so we do that. And so now, this function block can be accessed by full access, senior management, which is these people, or just Tyron, not through his user group, just as an individual. And this is the really, really fine level controls that we can now go to with the new user management in LOXONE. So we can keep it exactly the same as we had it before, with users in groups, and then blocks are allowed by groups. But we also have that extra little bit of granularity that we can do just single access for a specific person for a specific reason. You also have the ability on a really, really granular level to actually add groups to groups as well. So if you have subgroups that go within wider groups, and then the wider group has a specific level of access, but then the subgroups have different access, again, you could do this. So you could have an all staff group that you then assign, let's say, the front door keypad to, but then within the all staff group, you could have subgroups for each of the departments, which then have their individual access to. So really, really granular. You can mix it together as much as you want or break it apart as much as you want access. Super, super cool. Really, really nice additions. And as I said, with a lot of it, you can also add schedules. You can create schedules, give it a name. So let's say cleaner hours. Put the times in, and then under a lot of the things that you can do with the rights, you can say what the access times are. So we could say that the cleaner would have access to the function blocks that are outside, so things like the NFC code touch, only during cleaner hours. Simple. Other than that, that is it for me on user management. As always, version 11, its release is imminent. So probably by the time you're watching this webinar, if you're not watching it live, version 11 would have already been released. For anyone who is joining me live, please remember that you can go to our website and download the beta. So please remember that on our website, we have the public beta. And on this page, you can download config and app betas. Please give it a try. Please download it, try it out, have a little play around about it. I'm a big fan of these user management changes because for the most part, they're not going to affect any existing system. But for commercial and industrial access, especially, or rights, it gives an entirely new level of granularity and control to the system. Thank you ever so much for joining. Please join me again next time. Goodbye.